The stars had watched humanity crawl out of the dirt. They had seen the first fires, the first ships, the first steps beyond the pale blue world that gave birth to the species. And now, 200 years after humanity reached for the cosmos, the stars would witness something new. They would see humanity pushed to the edge. Admiral Daniel Carter stood at the window of the diplomatic shuttle and looked out at the void. Behind him, the soft hum of the engines filled the cabin. Ahead of him, growing larger with each passing minute, was the greatest structure he had ever seen. The Concorde Capital Station was made of crystal. It caught the light of distant suns and threw it back in colors that had no names in human languages. Towers rose from its surface like frozen flames, and ships moved around it like insects around a hive. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the elder species ruled. Ambassador Lisa Monroe sat at the small table behind him, reading through her notes for what must have been the 100th time. She was a small woman with gray in her hair and lines around her eyes that came from too many sleepless nights. She had spent 15 years fighting for humanity in the halls of galactic power. She had won small victories and suffered great defeats, but she had never stopped fighting. They agreed to formal talks, she said quietly. After 3 years of silence, they finally agreed. Why now? Daniel turned from the window. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and hands that had seen war. He had commanded ships in the border conflicts and watched good people die in the dark between stars. He knew how power worked. He knew that the powerful never gave anything without expecting something in return. Because they have made a decision, he said, and they want to tell us what it is. The shuttle docked at the station an hour later. Human guards in formal uniforms escorted the delegation through corridors of crystal and light. Other species watched them pass. Some were tall and thin, with skin like polished stone. Others were short and covered in scales that shifted color with their moods. A few had no solid form at all, moving through the air like clouds of living dust. None of them spoke to the humans. None of them even looked at them for more than a moment. To the elder species, humanity was young. Humanity was small. Humanity was nothing. The Chamber of Eternal Accord was the largest room Daniel had ever entered. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top, casting soft shadows over the assembly below. Platforms circled the walls in rising tiers, and on each platform sat the representatives of an elder species. There were 12 of them, 12 civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built empires when humanity was still learning to farm. They had mapped the stars when humans thought the world was flat. And they had decided, long ago, that no new power would ever rise to challenge them. The human delegation stood in the center of the chamber, on a small platform that barely rose above the floor. Daniel understood the message. They were meant to feel small. They were meant to feel weak. He refused to feel either. The Vethrani Praetor spoke first. It was an insectoid creature, twice the height of a man, with 4 arms and eyes like polished obsidian. Its voice came through a translator device that hung around its neck, turning its clicks and whistles into cold, precise words. Humanity has grown, the Praetor said. You have spread to 29 systems. You have built ships and stations and colonies. You have done this faster than any species in recorded history. Lisa stepped forward. We are proud of what we have achieved. We hope to achieve more with the support of the Concorde. The Praetor made a sound that might have been laughter. Support? No. Humanity will not receive support. Humanity will receive correction. A murmur ran through the chamber. The other species shifted on their platforms, watching with ancient eyes. The Concorde has discussed your situation, the Praetor continued. We have reached a decision. Humanity will cede its outer colonies, all 17 of them. You will withdraw to your original 12 systems and accept permanent restriction. You will build no more military vessels. You will expand no further. Lisa kept her voice steady, but Daniel could see her hands shake at her sides. Praetor, those colonies hold 12 billion people. You are asking us to abandon them. We are not asking, the Praetor said. We are telling. This is the judgment of the Concord. You have 90 cycles to comply. If you do not, we will remove your outer colonies by force. We will reduce your fleet to nothing, and we will place your species under permanent supervision. The chamber fell silent. Daniel looked around at the faces of the elder species. He saw no sympathy there, no doubt, no mercy. These were beings who had crushed 100 civilizations before humanity existed. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They ruled. Lisa spoke again, and this time her voice was different. The shaking was gone. In its place was something cold and hard, like steel being forged in fire. The people of those colonies are human beings, she said. They have families, children, lives they have built with their own hands. We will not abandon them. We cannot. The Praetor leaned forward on its platform. Its four arms spread wide in a gesture that seemed almost threatening. Then you will be corrected, it said. Humanity will learn its place, as all species have learned before you. You are young. You are weak, and you are alone. Daniel stepped up beside Lisa. He had been silent through the entire exchange, watching and listening. Now he spoke, and his voice carried through the vast chamber like a warning bell. We are not alone, he said. We have each other, and we have something else. Something you do not understand. The Praetor tilted its massive head. And what is that? We do not surrender, Daniel said. Not to nature, not to death, and not to you. We came out of the mud and reached the stars through pure refusal to accept what we were told was impossible. You see our youth as weakness. We see it as strength. We are still hungry. We are still fighting. And we have never in all our history accepted a cage. The Praetor was silent for a long moment. Then it made that sound again, the one that might have been laughter. Words, it said. Brave words from a small species. You have 90 cycles. When they end, you will see what the Concord does to those who refuse correction. Lisa gathered her notes and looked up at the assembled powers of the galaxy one last time. Then these talks have failed, she said. And humanity will remember why. We will remember this day, and this chamber, and the choice you made here. And one day, you will remember it too. The human delegation turned and walked from the chamber of eternal accord. They did not bow. They did not look back. They walked with their heads high and their backs straight, and the elder species watched them go with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires. They did not know it yet, but they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. The message reached Earth in 3 days. It spread across human space in 3 more. And in the week that followed, something changed in the heart of humanity. Fear turned to anger. Anger turned to purpose. And purpose turned to preparation. Secretary of Defense Nathan Cole stood at the head of a long table in a bunker beneath the surface of Mars. The room had no windows. The walls were made of reinforced steel 3 meters thick. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and old coffee. This was the most secret place in human space. And the people gathered. Around the table were the most dangerous humans. Alive. Admiral Megan Price commanded the 3rd Fleet. She was a woman, in her 50s, with short gray hair and scars on her hands, from a reactor explosion 20 years ago. She had never lost a battle, and she did not intend to start now. Captain Kevin Walsh was the youngest person in the room. He was barely 30, with dark eyes that missed nothing and a mind that could see patterns where others saw chaos. He had written the tactical plans that would either save humanity or destroy it. Dr. Christina Vale stood at the far end of the table. She was thin and pale, with the look of someone who spent too much time underground. She had worked in facilities that appeared on no maps, building weapons that existed in no records. She was the reason humanity had a chance. "The Concord has given us 90 days, Nathan said. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the edge of the table. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to give up our colonies, our ships, our future. They expect us to become their servants. What they expect," Admiral Price said, "is irrelevant. What matters is what we do." Nathan nodded slowly. He looked around the table at the faces of the men and women who held the fate of their species in their hands. Then he pressed a button on the table, and a holographic display came to life in the center of the room. 50 years ago, he said, humanity faced a choice. We could trust the Concord to treat us fairly, or we could prepare for the day when they decided we were a threat. He gestured the display. Our ancestors chose to prepare. The hologram showed ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. They were sleek and dark, built for speed and violence. They looked nothing like the vessels that flew under human flags in public. These were weapons, pure and simple. The Black Fleet, Nathan continued. 1,700 warships, built in secret facilities throughout the outer systems. Crewed by volunteers who gave up their lives and their identities to serve in the shadows. Ready to fight a war that we always knew was coming. Captain Walsh leaned forward. The Concord has over 4,000 military vessels. Even with the Black Fleet, we are outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Numbers are not everything, Dr. Vale said. She stepped toward the display and changed the image. Now it showed the internal systems of a single ship, its engines glowing with an unfamiliar blue light. The Concord ships use full drives for faster-than-light travel. A journey across a single sector takes them 3 days. Our ships use Cascade technology. How fast? Admiral Price asked. 4 hours, Dr. Vale said. For the same distance. We can be anywhere in the galaxy before they even know we have moved. Silence fell over the room. Nathan watched the faces of his commanders as they understood what this meant. Speed was power. Speed was the ability to strike and vanish, to appear where you were not expected and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. Speed was victory. There is more, Dr. Vale continued. The elder species have used the same weapons for 10,000 years. Plasma bolts, energy shields, tractor beams. They work well against each other because everyone uses the same technology. They have never faced anything different. She changed the display again. This time, it showed a weapon that looked almost simple. A long tube with a magnetic coil wrapped around it. Kinetic accelerators, she said. They fire solid tungsten projectiles at 12% of the speed of light. No shield the Concord has ever built can stop them. One round can tear through a battleship from bow to stern. And our ships carry hundreds of rounds each. Admiral Price smiled for the first time since the meeting began. It was not a pleasant smile. What about their planets? She asked. Their stations? Their infrastructure? Dr. Vale pressed another button. A new weapon appeared on the display. It was small, almost delicate, like a silver seed. Antimatter warheads, she said. Each one carries enough destructive power to crack a planet's crust. We have 10,000 of them. Nathan raised his hand for silence. The room was buzzing with energy now, with the fierce hope of people who had been afraid and suddenly found themselves with a weapon in their hands. We have the tools, he said. But tools are not enough. We need a plan. Captain Walsh? Kevin Walsh stood up and walked to the display. He changed the image to show a map of the galaxy, with human space marked in blue and Concord territory marked in red. The red covered almost everything. "The Concorde expects us to defend," he said. "They expect us to gather our ships around our colonies and wait for the attack. They expect us to be afraid." He drew a line on the map, cutting through the heart of Concorde space. "We will not defend," he said. "We will attack. The moment their deadline expires, we will strike at their military installations throughout the galaxy. Not one target, not 10, hundreds. Simultaneously, we will hit their shipyards, their supply lines, their command centers. We will show them that nowhere is safe. And their fleets?" Admiral Price asked. "They will hunt us." "Let them try," Kevin said. "Our ships are faster. Our weapons are stronger. And we have something else they do not have." He paused, looking around the room. "We have nothing to lose. The Concorde has ruled for 10,000 years. They have territories and treasures and traditions to protect. We have only our survival. And that makes us more dangerous than they can possibly imagine." Nathan stood up and walked to the window. There was no view, only the gray steel of the bunker wall. But in his mind, he saw the stars. He saw the billions of humans who were counting on him. He saw the future that they would build or the extinction they would face. "There is one more thing," he said quietly. "Something the Concorde does not understand about humanity. Something they have never bothered to learn." "What is that?" Dr. Vale asked. Nathan turned back to face the room. His eyes were hard, but there was something else in them too. Something that might have been hope. "They have watched us for 200 years, he said. "They have studied our art and our music and our literature. They have analyzed our governments and our economies and our religions. They think they know what we are. But they have only seen us at peace." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "They have never seen what humans become when we fight for our survival. They have never seen what we did to each other in our wars. They have never understood the darkness that lives inside us, the savagery we are capable of when everything we love is threatened." He smiled, and it was the same smile Admiral Price had worn earlier. The smile of a predator about to hunt. "They are about to learn." The meeting ended an hour later. Orders went out to the Black Fleet. Secret facilities began final preparations. And across human space, 1,700 ships powered up their cascade drives and waited for the signal that would change the galaxy forever. The Concorde had given humanity 90 days to surrender. Humanity would use that time very differently. The deadline came on a Tuesday. Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched the Concorde fleet drop out of fold space above New Athens. The colony world hung below him like a blue and green jewel, home to 3 billion humans who had built their lives on its surface. They had farms and cities and schools. They had children who had never known any other sky dot, and now 400 warships had come to take it all away. The Defiance was alone. One ship against an armada. The rest of the human fleet was scattered across the outer systems, or so the Concorde believed. Daniel had positioned his vessel in orbit 3 days ago, waiting. He had refused all orders to withdraw. He had refused all offers of reinforcement. He knew what needed to happen, and he knew he was the one who had to do it. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "the Vethrani flagship is hailing us. Put it through." The main view screen flickered, and the face of a Vethrani commander appeared. It was not the Praetor who had spoken at the peace talks, but another of its species, younger and more aggressive. Its forearms moved in patterns of contempt as it spoke. "Human vessel," it said, "you are ordered to stand down immediately. The correction of your species begins now. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Daniel looked at the creature on his screen. He thought about the words Lisa Monroe had spoken in the Chamber of Eternal Accord. He thought about the billions of people on the planet below. He thought about his daughter, who lived on a colony just like this one, who would face the same fate if he failed today. "This is Admiral Daniel Carter of the USS Defiance," he said. "I have a message for the Concorde." The Vethrani commander tilted its head. "Speak your message, human." "It will be your last," Daniel smiled. "Defiance does not stand down," he said. "She lives up to her name." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. They were young, most of them. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not survive. They looked at him now with fear in their eyes, but also with trust. They believed in him. He would not let them down. "Activate the Cascade Drive," he ordered. "Target the flagship." The Defiance vanished. One moment the human ship was there, a small dot of light against the vast darkness. The next moment it was gone, disappeared into a fold of space that the Concorde's sensors could not track or understand. The Vethrani commander stared at the empty space where the Defiance had been. Its four hands clenched in confusion. Its officers shouted in alien tongues, trying to locate the vessel that had simply ceased to exist. Then, the Defiance reappeared. It came out of Cascade space behind the Vethrani flagship, so close that the two vessels almost touched. Before anyone could react, before a single order could be given, the Defiance fired. A single kinetic round left the ship's forward accelerator at 12% the speed of light. It crossed the distance to the flagship in less than a heartbeat. It struck the rear shields and passed through them as if they were made of paper. It entered the engine section and exited through the bridge. It carried with it the atoms of the Vethrani commander, scattered now across the void. The flagship broke apart in silence. Fire bloomed in the vacuum, consuming oxygen and crew and metal. The largest vessel in the Concorde fleet died in less than 3 seconds, and the Defiance was already gone. The human ship appeared again, this time in the middle of the Concorde formation. 2 more kinetic rounds lashed out, destroying a cruiser and a destroyer before anyone could fire back. Then the Cascade Drive activated again, and the Defiance vanished. This happened 4 more times. 4 more appearances. 8 more destroyed vessels. The Concorde fleet fell into chaos. They fired blindly at empty space. They collided with each other, trying to change position. They screamed for reinforcements that were days away. And then the rest of humanity arrived. Captain Kevin Walsh's tactical plan had called for 1,700 ships to arrive simultaneously, surrounding the Concorde Armada in a sphere of death. In practice, the timing was off by nearly 2 seconds. It did not matter. The Black Fleet dropped out of Cascade space in a ring of fire and steel. Admiral Megan Price commanded the first wave from the bridge of the USS Horizon. Dr. Christina Vale watched from a command ship far behind the lines, recording data that would shape the next phase of the war. "All ships," Admiral Price broadcast. "Weapons free." The 12-minute war began. Kinetic accelerators fired in waves, their tungsten rounds invisible to the naked eye, but devastating in their effect. Concorde vessels exploded one after another, their plasma weapons unable to track targets that moved too fast to follow. The elder species had never faced an enemy like this. They had never imagined that such an enemy could exist. A Vethrani captain tried to rally his squadron, ordering them into a defensive formation. The USS Righteous appeared beside his vessel, fired 3 rounds through its hull, and vanished before his weapons could lock on. He died still giving orders that no one would ever follow. A Morvith battle cruiser, one of the largest ships in the fleet, attempted to flee into fold space. 2 human destroyers intercepted it, their Cascade drives depositing them directly in its path. The kinetic barrage that followed reduced the cruiser to a cloud of expanding debris. Commander Laura Bennett led a squadron of 12 fast attack vessels through the heart of the battle. Her targets were not the large warships, but the support vessels, the ships that carried ammunition and fuel and medical supplies. She destroyed 17 of them in 4 minutes, crippling the Concorde fleet's ability to sustain any prolonged engagement. By the 10th minute, the surviving Concorde vessels were in full retreat. They fled in every direction, their full drives screaming as they tried to escape the killing field. Some made it. Most did not. The human fleet hunted them with cold precision, cutting down stragglers and crippling vessels too damaged to run. When it was over, Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at what humanity had done. 387 Concorde vessels destroyed. Tens of thousands of alien crew killed. The greatest military defeat in 10,000 years of galactic history. Delivered in less than 12 minutes by a species the elder races had dismissed as children. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers. A graveyard of metal and crystal and frozen atmosphere. Through it drifted the bodies of the dead, spinning slowly in the eternal cold. The Admiral, his communications officer, said softly, "We are receiving transmissions from the planet." They saw everything. They are asking if it is over. Daniel thought about the question. He thought about the 90 days of preparation, the centuries of oppression, the millennia of Concorde rule. He thought about the billions of humans who had just witnessed their species rise from prey to predator. "No," he said, "it is not over. Send a message to the Concorde, to all their worlds, to all their species. Tell them what happened here today." "What should the message say, sir?" Daniel looked out at the debris field, at the remains of the fleet that had come to enslave his people. His voice was quiet but carried clearly through the bridge. "Tell them New Athens remains human. Tell them the age of submission is over. And tell them we are coming." The message went out at the speed of light, racing toward every corner of the galaxy. It carried with it news that would shake the foundations of 10,000 years of Concorde rule. Humanity was no longer asking for permission to exist. They were taking it. The news of New Athens spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The elder species heard it first, receiving transmissions from fleeing survivors and scattered sensor stations. They learned that their fleet had been destroyed. They learned that a weapon existed that could bypass their shields. They learned that humanity could move through space faster than anything they had ever seen. And they were afraid. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Concorde did not know what to do. Their councils met in emergency sessions that lasted for days. Their military commanders argued and accused each other of failure. Their populations, long accustomed to absolute safety, began to panic. But humanity did not wait for them to recover. 3 days after New Athens, the Second Fleet struck at the Vethrani shipyards in the Korath system. Commander Laura Bennett led the assault from the bridge of the USS Vengeance, a destroyer that had been built in secret 20 years ago for exactly this purpose. The shipyards were massive structures, orbital platforms where the Vethrani built their warships. Dozens of vessels were under construction when the humans arrived, their hulls incomplete and their weapons offline. They never had a chance to fight back. "Target the primary construction base," Lavra ordered. "Antimatter torpedoes, full spread." 12 silver seeds launched from her squadron, crossing the void in seconds. They struck the shipyards and turned them into expanding clouds of fire and molten metal. The vessels under construction died with them, along with the thousands of workers who had been building them. Lavra felt no satisfaction in the destruction. She felt no guilt either. This was war, and in war you destroyed your enemy's ability to fight. You hit them again and again until they could not hit back. You gave them no time to recover, no chance to regroup, no hope of victory. "Move to the secondary targets," she said. "We have 4 more systems to hit before the day's over." Across the galaxy, similar strikes were happening. Human fleets appeared at Concorde installations without warning. delivered their devastating attacks, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Supply depots exploded. Communication stations went dark. Fuel reserves burned in the void. Secretary Nathan Cole watched the reports flow into his command center on Mars. Each green dot on his display represented a successful strike. Each red dot represented casualties. There were more green than red, but the red dots were still there, still reminding him of the price his species was paying for survival. Dr. Christina Vale stood beside him, analyzing the data with the cold precision of a scientist. Their command structure is fragmenting, she said. The individual species of the Concord are beginning to act independently. The Vethrani are pulling back to defend their core worlds. The Morvith are demanding resources that the others refuse to share. The alliance is cracking. Good, Nathan said. But it is not enough. We need to make them fight each other, not just argue with each other. Captain Kevin Walsh had anticipated this. His plan included a second phase, one that did not involve weapons at all. Ambassador Lisa Monroe had spent the weeks since New Athens preparing for her role. While the fleets fought in space, she fought on a different battlefield. She broadcast messages to every corner of the galaxy, reaching out to the species that the Concord had conquered or diminished over the millennia. You have been told that resistance is impossible, she said in her transmissions. You have been told that the Concord cannot be defeated. You have been told that your only choice is submission. Humanity is proof that all of this was a lie. She sent recordings of the Battle of New Athens. She sent technical specifications for weapons that could bypass Concord shields. She sent promises of alliance and support to any species that rose up against their masters. The response was immediate. The Kethni were a reptilian species that had been conquered by the Concord 8,000 years ago. They had been reduced to servant status, forbidden from building military vessels or leaving their home system. They had waited and planned and hoped for a chance that never seemed to come. Now it had come. The Kethni uprising began with the assassination of their Concord governors. It continued with the seizure of weapon stockpiles that the elder species had foolishly stored on Kethni worlds. It spread to every planet in their system within 3 days, and within a week, the Kethni had a fleet. It was a small fleet made of stolen vessels and improvised weapons. But it was theirs, and they used it to blockade their system against Concord forces. The Morph followed soon after. Their homeworld had been stripped of resources by the Concord centuries ago, leaving their people poor and bitter. When they saw what the Kethni had done, they did the same. Mining stations became warships. Cargo haulers became troop transports. And the Morvith, who had been slaves for 500 years, remembered how to fight. Other species joined the rebellion as the weeks passed. Some were small, barely surviving on the fringes of Concord space. Others were large, with populations in the billions and industrial capacity that rivaled the elder species. They came together not because they trusted each other, but because they hated the Concord more than they feared the unknown. Admiral Daniel Carter received regular updates from the rebellion while commanding operations. In the outer reach, he stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched a display that showed the spread of revolution across the galaxy. Worlds that had been red were now turning blue. Fleets that had served the Concord were now fighting against it. We started this, he said quietly to his first officer, but we cannot control it. This is bigger than humanity now. His first officer nodded. Does that worry you, Admiral? Daniel thought about the question. He thought about all the species that had suffered under Concord rule. He thought about the violence that was spreading, the lives that were being lost on both sides. He thought about the galaxy that was burning because humanity had refused to accept change. Yes, he said finally. It worries me, but it was necessary. The Concorde would have crushed us if we had not crushed them first. And the other species, the ones who are rising now, they deserve their freedom too. They deserve the chance to decide their own futures. And what future are we building? His first officer asked. When this war is over, what will be left? Daniel did not answer immediately. He turned back to the display and watched the patterns of war shift and change. Somewhere out there, millions of beings were fighting and dying. Somewhere out there, the old order was crumbling, and something new was rising to take its place. I do not know, he admitted. But whatever it is, it will be chosen, not imposed. That is the difference. That is what we are fighting for. The war continued for another 18 months. Human fleets struck at the heart of Concorde power, while allied species attacked its edges. The elder races fought back with everything they had, but they were divided and demoralized. Their ancient alliance, built on shared dominance and mutual fear, could not survive the pressure dot by the end of the second year. The Concorde controlled less than half the territory it had held at the start of the war. Its fleets were scattered and depleted. Its populations were demanding peace at any cost. And its leaders, the ones who had sat in the chamber of eternal accord and pronounced judgment on humanity, were running out of options. The time for the final battle was approaching, and humanity was ready. 2 years had passed since the peace talks failed. 2 years of war and fire and death. 2 years of watching the old order burn and wondering what would rise from the ashes. Admiral Daniel Cotter stood on the bridge of the USS Resolution, the newest and largest vessel in the human fleet. It was a ship built for this moment, designed in the heat of war and launched 6 months ago. Around it hung the greatest armada humanity had ever assembled, joined now by the vessels of a dozen allied species who had thrown off their chains. Ahead of them floated the Concorde Capital Station, the same crystalline structure where Ambassador Lisa Monroe had rejected humanity's enslavement. Its towers still caught the light of distant stars. Its spires still rose like frozen flames. But now it was surrounded by the last fleet the elder species could muster. Nearly 2,000 vessels making their final stand. Lisa stood beside Daniel on the bridge, wearing the same formal suit she had worn to those failed negotiations. Her gray hair was shorter now, and the lines around her eyes had deepened. But her spine was straight, and her voice was steady. She had spent 2 years turning humanity's rebellion into a galactic revolution. She was not about to miss the end of it. "They are hailing us," the communications officer reported. Daniel looked at Lisa. She nodded. "Put it through." The main view screen flickered, and a familiar face appeared. The Vethrani Praetor, the same being who had delivered the Concorde's ultimatum 2 years ago, stared at them with compound eyes that seemed somehow diminished. The arrogance that had filled its voice in the chamber of eternal accord was gone. In its place was something Daniel had never expected to see in an elder species: fear. "Humans," the Praetor said, "you have made your point. The Concorde acknowledges your strength. We are prepared to offer you everything you demanded at the original talks. Full membership in the Concorde, equal status with the elder species, expanded territories, complete access to our technology and resources." Daniel waited. The Praetor continued, its voice becoming almost desperate. "We offer peace," it said. "True peace, partnership, an end to this war that has cost so many lives on all sides. What more could you want?" Lisa stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every human who had suffered under Concorde rule. It carried the memory of 12 billion people who had almost been abandoned. The fear of parents who had watched warships descend on their colonies. The rage of a species that had been told to accept chains or face extinction. 2 years ago, she said, "You offered us chains and called them protection. You threatened our children. You tried to scatter our people across the void. You gave us 90 days to surrender our future or watch you destroy it. The Praetor's mandibles clicked nervously. That was a mistake. We understand that now. We are offering you. You are offering us membership in the system that oppressed us, Lisa interrupted. You are offering us a seat at a table built on the suffering of 100 species. You are offering us a share of power that was taken by force and maintained through fear. She shook her head slowly. We do not want membership in the Concord. The Concord is over. The Praetor reared back, its forearms spreading wide. Then, what do you want? Tell us. Name your terms. Daniel stepped forward to stand beside Lisa. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all the orders he had given, all the deaths he had witnessed. He thought about the species that had risen up alongside humanity, the Gethani and the Morvith and all the others who had finally found the courage to fight for their freedom. We want something new, he said. Not an empire ruled by the strongest. Not an alliance of masters and servants. We want a true union of free species, where every civilization has a voice. Where decisions are made together, not imposed from above. Where peace is chosen, not enforced. The Praetor was silent for a long moment. Its compound eyes seemed to search for something in Daniel's face, some hint of weakness or deception. It found none. And what of the Concord? It asked finally. What of us? The species who ruled for 10,000 years? You will have the same voice as everyone else, Lisa said. No more. No less. You will be part of something greater than yourselves. Just as humanity will be. Just as everyone will be. The Praetor made a sound that might have been laughter, but there was no humor in it. Only bitterness and exhaustion and the weight of fallen empires. You ask us to become equals with species we once ruled, it said. You ask us to share power with those we conquered. Yes, Daniel said simply. We do. And if you refuse, we will continue this war until there is no Concord left to refuse anything. The transmission ended. The view screen went dark. And across the void, the Concord fleet began to move. The final battle lasted 7 hours. It was the largest space engagement in recorded history, with nearly 4,000 vessels fighting in a sphere of fire around the capital station. Human ships and allied vessels attacked in waves, their cascade drives allowing them to appear and disappear like ghosts. Concord ships fought with the desperation of those who know that defeat means the end of everything they have ever known. Daniel commanded the battle from the Vajrayan Resolution's bridge, watching the tactical display as thousands of lives blinked in and out of existence. He gave orders that sent ships to their deaths. He received reports of victories that cost too much. He felt the weight of every decision pressing down on him like the gravity of a dying star dot. But in the end, it was not the weapons that won the war. It was what Lisa had done in the 2 years before the final battle, the words she had spoken and the alliances she had built. When the Concord fleet began to waver, when its commanders saw that they could not win, they did not fight to the death. They surrendered. One by one, the warships of the elder species powered down their weapons and broadcast their submission. The Vethrani, the Morvith, the stone-skinned giants and the color-shifting reptiles and all the other ancient powers who had ruled the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. They surrendered not because they had to, but because they finally understood that they could not hold on to power by force alone. They surrendered because Lisa had shown them a different way, a future where their survival did not depend on domination. The Praetor was taken into custody without resistance. The crystalline towers of the capital station were occupied by human and allied forces. And in the great chamber where peace talks had failed 2 years ago, a new assembly gathered. They called it the Galactic Assembly. Its first act was to declare that no species would ever again rule another. Its second act was to establish a council where every civilization would have equal representation. Its third act was to begin the long work of rebuilding what the war had destroyed. Daniel did not attend the founding ceremony. He stood on the bridge of the Resolution and watched from orbit as shuttles carried diplomats and representatives into the Foliage Station. He was a soldier, and his work was done. The future belonged to people like Lisa, people who could build as well as they could fight. "Admiral," his first officer said, "Ambassador Monroe is asking if you want to come down for the ceremony. She says they want to honor you." Daniel shook his head. "Tell her I am proud of what we accomplished. Tell her I hope the assembly succeeds. But tell her also that I have seen enough of that station. I have seen enough of ceremonies and speeches and political games." He turned to look out the viewport at the stars. "I am going home," he said. "I want to see Earth again. I want to walk on grass and breathe real air and remember what we were fighting for." The Resolution broke orbit an hour later. Its Cascade drive, carrying it toward a small blue world that had once seemed so fragile and alone. Behind it, the Galactic Assembly began its work, and the species of the galaxy took their first steps toward a future that no one had dared to imagine. Humanity had not asked to shatter the galaxy. They had only refused to be broken by it. They had stood up when they were told to kneel. They had fought back when they were told to surrender. And in the end, they had not just won their freedom. They had given it to everyone. The stars watched as Daniel Carter went home. The same stars that had seen humanity crawl out of the dirt. The same stars that would now see them walk among equals. The war was over. The future had begun.